Hey everyone and welcome back. Now in today's video we'll be discussing about the Consul autopilot feature. Now before we discuss more in detail about the autopilot feature in Consul, let's have a quick overview about the autopilot pattern. So the autopilot pattern automates in code the repetitive and boring operational tasks of an application, including startup, shutdown, scaling and recovery from anticipated failure conditions for reliability, ease of use and improved productivity. So a very big 3-line detail about autopilot pattern. Let's quickly understand in simple detail with the diagram. So let's assume that you have a console here and you have a autopilot here. Now when the autopilot detects that there is some X event that has occurred, depending upon the configuration of the autopilot, so here you have various configuration like A, B and C. So if a autopilot detects that in console there is some event that has occurred, it goes ahead and it performs a N operation here. Now do note that this N operation is done automatically for you. So in the middle of the night, let's assume that there is some event that has occurred for which the operator or a system administrator might have to manually intervene. So if he has configured the autopilot accordingly, then the autopilot will do things for you. You do not really have to worry about that. So that's the very high level overview. So now it becomes much more simpler to understand that the autopilot pattern automates in code the repetitive and boring operational task of an application. So let's take few use cases to understand things in more detail. First use case is related to dead servers. Now generally in Consul, if a server is dead, it will take 72 hours for dead server to automatically read, or an operator must write a script to run a Consul force leave command. Now if you have the autopilot settings configured, then autopilot helps prevent these kind of outages by quickly removing the failed servers as soon as a replacement Consul server comes online. Now let's look into the use case 2 of server stabilization time, for which we'll also have a practical now. So it states that when a new server is added to the data center, there is a waiting period where it must be healthy and stable for certain amount of time before promoted to a full voting member. This is very important part to remember. So if you are joining one more server within the cluster, that server will not be immediately part of a voting member for a quorum. So it must be healthy and stable for a certain amount of time. So this certain amount of time is defined by the server stabilization time autopilot's parameter, and it defaults to 10 seconds here. Now in case your organization requires a different configuration, so let's say you do not really need 10 seconds, you need 60 seconds, then this is something that you can easily do by configuring the autopilot settings. So let's quickly jump into practical and understand how exactly it works. So currently I am within the CLI, and for today's demo we have 3 servers, and for each server we have 2 tabs. So currently here you see that I have 6 tabs that are available, 2 for Consul 01, 2 for Consul 02 and 2 for Demo 02. So make sure that in all of these servers the Consul is not started via this systemd. So we'll be making use of the CLI to go ahead and start Consul. So let's go ahead and start the Consul agent within the server mode. The bootstrap expect here would be 3. That's great. So within the Consul 02, let's go ahead and start the Consul agent again within the server mode. And from a second tab for Consul 02, let's go ahead and run the Consul join command, where this is the IP of our Consul 01 node. So now going to Consul 01, if you do a Consul members, you should see that there are 2 members that are part. Now going to Demo 02, let's also go ahead and start a Consul agent within the server mode. And within the second tab, let's go ahead and join the cluster. So going back to the second tab of Consul 01, if you do a Consul members, you should see all the 3 servers are part of the cluster. And if you run a command of Consul operator raf list-peers, it will give you the list of the servers. It will also show you which among the server is a leader and which among the server is a follower. So currently you have the first server, which is the Consul 01, that is acting as a leader, and currently within the voter you see all of them has a option of true that is associated with it. Now As we are discussing about the use case 2 of server stabilization time, where anytime a new server is added, there is a waiting period where it must be healthy and stable for certain amount of time before being promoted to a full voting member. So since the Consul 02 and the demo 02 are considered as a voting member, since they have a vote of true, they have already cleared that required amount of time. So let's look into how we can see this specific server stabilization time parameter. So within the leader node, let's go ahead and do a Consul operator autopilot. As soon as I press enter, there are two sub commands. One is get config and second is set config. So let's go ahead and do a get config. So here it will give you the list of options that are added. So you have cleanup dead servers is equal to true. So this was associated with the first use case. And you also have a server stabilization time as 10 seconds. So only after the server is healthy and stable for 10 seconds will it be counted as a full voting member. So let's go ahead and change these specific settings and see on how exactly it might affect. So you can do a Consul operator autopilot. You can do a set config this time. Let's say server stabilization time and let's put it to 60 seconds. So now if you do a get config, you see the server stabilization time has been changed from 10 seconds to 1 minute. So from the Consul 02, let's go ahead and do a Consul leave. So it will go ahead and leave the cluster. Let's run the Consul operator raft list-ps, and currently you see there are only two servers, one in the leader mode and second in the follower mode. Great. So now since the Consul 02 has left, let's go ahead and join it yet again. So I'll do a Consul join. So when I do a Consul operator raft list-ps this time, you will see that this Consul 02 that has recently joined, the voter is false now. And in fact, it will go ahead and wait for certain amount of time before the voter turns true. So in fact, if you go ahead and try this command yet again you will see that the voter is false. So this is where the server stabilization time comes into picture. So many times it can happen that the server is still within the configuration state and the system administrator wanted to join the cluster with the voter of true maybe after 2 minutes or 5 minutes. So you can go ahead with the help of autopilot and you can change the configuration accordingly. So now let's go ahead and run it. Still it is false. And when you run it again, now you see the voter has turned out to be true. So earlier it used to be very fast. Since it was just 10 seconds, as soon as we joined it, it was part of the voter. However, now it is 1 minute, it will take little amount of time. Now along with that, there are a lot of interesting things that you can do with autopilot. We just looked into the basics of server stabilization time. With the help of enterprise, there are various interesting features that are also available. Now discussing about some of the interesting features that are part of the Consul enterprise for autopilot. Two of them are primary ones. One is the redundancy zones and second is the automated upgrades. Again, these are very interesting features that we'll be discussing while we are talking about the Consul enterprise section. Great. So that's the high level overview about the autopilot configuration.